Hello and welcome, I'm Clueless Mike and this is Modelling for Advantage. Roll the VT. Okay, so the Death Guard Codex is out this week and you are joining me as I'm going to do a quick video like I've done before of my top 10 kind of like takes from reading the new codex. It's a really interesting book, a real change to the army, whereas often a codex comes out and it just updates a few data sheets and stuff. This one is a real big change to loads of stuff that's going on. So without further ado, let's dip into the army-wide special rules. And quite a lot has changed here. So you've still got all your same things, like you've got your plague weapons, you've got malicious volleys. Disgustingly resilient has changed. It used to be a 5+, feel no pain, ignore wounds type of save. It now is -1 damage, really powerful, as all the plague marines and terminators have all gained an extra wound, so making them really resilient, things like overcharged plasma guns and such. They've got an ability called Inexorable Advance, which means they basically don't count as moving when firing their weapons and such, unless they've advanced or unless they've fallen back. So that's pretty powerful. What else? I'll just have a quick look down here at my notes. They ignore movement penalties. That's really strong. But another thing to note here is what's missing, and this is kind of like a key to what's going to happen in future Chaos Codexes, I suspect. There's no longer Death to the False Emperor, so that's completely gone. And also they don't have any Shock Assault or Hateful Assault ability, which is the ability that all Space Marines had to get +1 attack in the first round of combat. But to compensate for that, more or less every unit in the whole codex has gained an attack, just a permanent attack on their profile. So much more useful, especially for an army which has got real staying power, so it's more likely to stay in combat for multiple rounds. So that is most of the army-wide special abilities. Next up, we have some army restrictions. So restrictions on what you use to construct your army. And this is quite interesting. In the Necron and the Space Marine Codex brought out, they had a few little restrictions in there. Things like in the Space Marine Codex, you couldn't take 2 captains. But this codex goes a little bit further than that and is a bit more restrictive. It adds more flavour, I think, and I don't mind it overall, but it's quite restrictive, as you'll see when I explain what you have to do. So firstly, Poxwalkers and Cultists are the 2 cheap troop choices. You can only take as many of each of those as you've taken Plague Marine cult troops, core troops. So Terminators and basic Chaos Space Marine Plague Marines, and I think possibly Possessed as well. They might be core, but you can only take as many Cultist units as you've taken those. You can only take as many Zombie units as you have those. So if you take 2 Plague Marine units and no other kind of like Death Guard infantry, then you can take 2 Cultist units and 2 Zombie units. Also, while I remember, Cultists no longer gain objectives secured in Death Guard army, so you're probably not going to take many of them because zombies are really good, or Poxwalkers are really good. So that's one of the restrictions to start with, not particularly difficult to get round. The next one, though, is much harder. It is a restriction. You can only have 1 Lord of the Death Guard, which is a new keyword. You can only have 1 Lord of the Death Guard per detachment. Now, you think, that doesn't sound too bad. But then you look at which units have the Lord of the Death Guard keyword, and it's more or less all of the HQ options. So the Demon Prince has it, the Lord of Virulence, the Lord of Corruption, the Chaos Lord in Terminator armour, all of those have it. So you can't have 2 or mix and match of those in the same detachment. Typhus also has that rule, so you can't have him and a Lord of Corruption in the same detachment. So the only 2 HQ choices you can have in a detachment with any of the other HQ choices are the 2 Psychers, so the Terminator Psyker and the Miasma Psyker. They're the only 2 you can take with Lords of anything, with Lords of the Death Guard. It's really restrictive, and it kind of like lends the army to building multiple patrol detachments into one if you want more than one of the Lord options. So really quite restrictive in that regard. They have thrown you a bone slightly. Death Guard have a load of elite character models. There's about 5 of them, things like the Noxious Blightbringer and the Plague Surgeon, stuff like that. If you take up to 3 of those, they only take up 1 elite choice. So again, I think that's kind of like trying to push you towards fielding patrol detachments where you don't have many elite slots to fill, so you can throw a load of them into that 1 slot. So quite important to look how you're building your armies now with the Death Guard. Okay, so the next thing is the real big change, and one of the core kind of like things you can see they've built this whole new codex around, and that is Contagion abilities. So all of the units in the codex start off with a basic Contagion ability, which is it's not an aura, very specifically in the rules it's not an aura, but it's like an aura ability. It starts off on round 1, it has a 1-inch range, round 2 3-inch range, round 3 6-inch range, up to round 4 where it is a 9-inch range around all of your units, and the base ability is enemy units get -1 toughness. This is a hugely powerful ability, so any close combat you're in at any point, the enemy is -1 toughness. Really good. So strength 6 weapons are now going to be wounding toughness 4 models on 2s, because the toughness 4 will go down to toughness 3. Really powerful in that regard. But there are lots of other things that key into this Contagion range, and there's loads of abilities throughout the whole codex that build into it. One of the key ones is that there are 7 plague companies that you get to choose from, and you choose each detachment to be part of a plague company. Now, when you choose a plague company, it gives you an extra relic to choose, it gives you an extra stratagem you can use, but the main thing it gives you is a new warlord trait to take, and that warlord trait gives your warlord a new aura ability around himself, a new Contagion ability, and some of these are really powerful. So there's one that means that any enemy units within Contagion range of your warlord can't use Overwatch, can't re-roll any hit or wound rolls. Really powerful. There's another one which is halves movement of enemy units within Contagion range, which can be 9 inches. It can actually be up to 12 inches with various buffs. So it's just a really interesting ability, and loads of stuff keys into it. There's spells that extend the range, there's stratagems that work with it, loads of stuff. And if you imagine it's going to be on turn 4, 9 inches from every model in your army, you're going to be covering most of the table in this, and it really kind of like adds a load of flavour as kind of like a creeping miasma spreads across the table along with your units. So I really like it. Then we have Deadly Pathogens. This is like the other new codexes. They like to stick in a little upgrade you can buy for various characters, just give you a bit more customization. It's not a relic or anything like that, but it's a bonus you can buy for your character. They cost between 10 and 20 points, and you apply it to a plague weapon that any character model in your army, non-special characters, has, or you can give it to kind of like sergeants and champions in units that also have plague weapons. The base ability is it gives +1 strength, and then it gives other abilities depending on which one you choose. There are things like ignoring cover, there are things like giving extra AP, there's things like re-rolling the number of shots to random hit weapons. So interesting little bonuses for a small cost. There are certain ones that I think are better than others, and certain ones of these special elite character choices are kind of like, you can see they've designed some of these pathogens to go with those characters. So I think you'll see a few of those come into play. Now I'm going to talk about the kind of like relics, warlord traits, psychic power, stratagems, and I'm not really going to pick many out here because they're pretty standard, to be honest. There's nothing hugely stand out. I think there's one strat in the whole book that costs more than 2 CP, so there's no real power, and that's kind of like a theme that you've been seeing, no real overpoweredness to the stratagems and such, and you've seen that from the Necron and the Space Marine Codex and the supplements as well. So that continues here. One of my favourite ones that I quite like though is, now what was it called? Flash Outbreak. You choose one of your units and it basically gains the Contagion ability of your warlord. Now I've picked this one to talk about just because it shows, as I was saying a few minutes ago, about the Contagion range. So say you've got your warlord who halves movement nearby him, and you've shot one of your fast moving drones up the table, then you can play the stratagem on him, and that drone gains that warlord trait. So anyone within 9 inches of that drone, you can shoot him into the heart of the enemy army, pop this stratagem, everything's half movement within range of him, and there are loads of other cool stuff you can do in that regard. So really good stratagem. And another one is called Eruption of Filth. Use this when one of your characters has died and he explodes like a vehicle exploding, and filth goes everywhere but doesn't hurt your noble units. So really interesting, really quite flavourful as well. So I really like those 2 strats, but the rest of them are just standard stuff. You've got a lot of the ones from the old codex back in, similar with the relics and the psychic powers and such. Okay, now we're moving on to data sheets, and I'm going to talk about the Marines, so the Plague Marines, and the 2 types of Terminators. They are all really solid units now. Plague Marines going up to 2 wounds, they've gone up to 2 base attacks, so they're just super solid. They're 21 points each, which for a toughness 5, model with 2 wounds that reduces all damage by 1. That is so good. They've got a ton of options on them, but they are a little restrictive. So they've changed around how you choose all the different upgrades you give them. The Plague Marines have a massive amount of upgrades, but they've written the datasheet so it builds basically what you get in the box, which I'm not a huge fan of because I'm quite happy converting my models, and I know loads of people are. But for those people who just like to build as the box comes, that's fine. You don't need to buy multiple boxes to get kind of like the specific loadout you want, because you can no longer take that loadout. Things like you used to be able to take 2 melter guns in a 5-man squad, but only 1 melter gun came in the box. So now you can only take 1 melter gun in a 5-man squad. But you can take 1 melter gun and 1 blight launcher in a 5-man squad, because you get both of those in the box. So it's slightly counterintuitive for those longer term players who are used to much more customization in their units. But I can see why they've done it, and it's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. Now that's how they're going. The Terminators are both really solid, with 3 wounds now, lots of weapon options and stuff, but the Death Shroud are my favourites. They're the ones with the big scythe, the bodyguard models. They've got 4 base attacks now. Their scythes do a 2 damage, but you can also have them go into sweep mode, so they get multiple attacks with them instead. Really good, really solid. Love these. I'm definitely going to be fielding some. Their Plague Spurt gauntlets have now got 12-inch range on them, so you can deep strike them in, spew some of filth over stuff, and then charge in and hack it up with your scythes. So I think those are going to be the core units that you'll see in most Death Guard armies. Poxwalkers are up next, the dreaded plague zombies. Now these have had quite a change from before, so they've lost their 5+ feel no pain like most Death Guard units, but they've actually still got a 6+, which is really good. They've now got toughness 4 base, which is really powerful on such a cheap model, because when I say cheap, they are 5 points a model now. They used to be 7 points, and I think they've actually got better, because they've also gone up to 4+ weapon skill. For 5 points, you've got a 4-up weapon skill, 2 attack model. When it kills enemy models, it gains an extra model back into their unit up to its starting strength. I think you're going to see a couple of blocks of 20 in these in most armies. That's 200 points for 40 reasonably tough little bodies that are immune to morale, are objective secured, can sweep forward. They can't do any actions other than there's a special action for one of these secondary objectives in this book. But other than that, they can't do any actions. But they're just really solid. They're a carpet of bodies, hard to chew through, and yeah, I think you're going to see loads of these for that price point. Really solid. Typhus. Typhus is the kind of like special character in here, special character lord, and he's really powerful. He is kind of like a mishmash of a Psyker and a Chaos Lord. Stick them together, he's got the Chaos Lord stats, the Psyker's psychic abilities, he's got a really good relic weapon, which is kind of like a slightly less strength Thunder Hammer, but it also has that sweep mode, so it can double his attack, so he gets 12 hits with it in sweep mode. He gets Death Guard core units to reroll 1s to hit. He's got a couple of ways of dealing out mortal wounds, the stuff nearby. What else has he got? He increases his Contagion range by 3 inches, which is an ability he shares with the Lord of Contagion. Just really solid. I mean, if you're looking for a single HQ to take, this guy covers all the bases, and he also improves Poxwalkers' strength by 1 as well when they're nearby. So really solid. There's another new Lord character called the Lord of Virulence, who is the new model they've released. He comes with a double plague sprayer and a plague power fist. He's also a really good option that I think you'll see quite often, because he's got an aura that helps improve the AP of ranged attacks nearby. So really good Lord options. Okay, Demon Engines were the 3 different kits that came out when the Death Guard Codex was originally released, and a lot of players have got multiple of these, and I think they've got better. They've got more expensive. That's one thing to point out. They've kind of like gone up by 40 points, I think, for the really cheap Blight Hauler, but it was far too cheap because it had a multi-melter, which is now an amazing weapon. But they've all gone up in price, but they've also all gone up in ability. They've all gone to 3+ weapon and ballistic skill, which is a massive improvement. And the Blight Hauler and the Bloat Drone have both lost a wound, which seems bad until you realise going from 10 down to 9 means you no longer have a degrading table. So instead of being 4+ ballistic skill goes down to 5+ ballistic skill, their 3+ ballistic skill never changes. And same with weapon skill, so really powerful in that regard. Also, the Bloat Drone, Flesh Mower is now probably the option you're going for. It can put out 12 attacks at damage 2. that is just going to plough through Primaris Marines, especially when you consider they're at -1 toughness and such, and this thing's got 3+ weapon skill to hit with, so it is an absolute Marine blender, and I think you'll see those. I'm going to be converting myself one up as we speak after this video. The Plague Burst Crawler has also got better. It's still a little more expensive, but its entropy cannons are now a much more useful option, dealing D3+3 damage. And its big cannon still ignores line of sight, no longer has a minimum range, which is great because minimum ranges are that's just rubbish. That's really old style rule. I don't really know why it was there. And they also do flat 2 damage, which I much prefer, giving you an kind of like a standard that you know you're going to get. Each of them also has their own stratagem that goes with them. Things like the Plague Burst Crawler gets to deal extra damage, and the Bloat Drone gets to heroically intervene, and the Blight Hauler can stick out a miasma around it. So they all get some extra use from the stratagems. Saving the best till last is Mortarion. My god, this guy is probably the best model in 40k now. He is so powerful in every aspect of his play. He's fast with wings. He's got toughness 8 now, and that's just the start of how his survivability is cranked up. Something amazing. You're just not going to kill him. I mean, if you fire your entire 2,000 point army into him, he's still unlikely to die. Things like you can still cast Psychic Power to give him -1 to be hit. He's got the new Disgustingly Resilient, so -1 damage. But he's also still got the 5+ Feel No Pain, because this guy gets not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 Warlord traits to choose. So he gets his 3 basic Warlord traits. One is 5+ Feel No Pain. He also gets the aura of re-rolling wounds with plague weapons. Doesn't affect himself anymore because he's not core. And then he gets another amazing Warlord trait, which means that enemy units within 3 inches of him can't gain the benefit of any aura abilities that might be affecting them, so it'll cut out all of their rerolls, which adds to his survivability. But his best Warlord trait that he gets to choose at the start of the game, and he gets to choose one of the 7 Plague Company Contagion Warlord traits. So you could give him the one that halves movement within 9 inches of him. You can give him the one that cancels all rerolls nearby him, and there are a plethora of other ones you can take. And the best thing about it is you tailor that at the start of the game. It specifically says choose at the start of the first battle round. So that's so powerful. His attacks have got better. He can now put out 21 sweep attacks. He's got 7 attacks that deal D3+3 damage. He's just all round brilliant. He's got the Chapter Master reroll thing where you pick a unit to gain full rerolls. He's got the reroll 1s aura. There is so much stuff that this guy can do, and you're going to see him all over every Death Guard army, I think. I can't see any reason not to take him. I am in the middle of painting my one as we speak, and I want to get him to the table as soon as the damn COVID disappears, but I suppose that is Nurgle's wish at the moment. Okay, comment down below, what do you really like from the new Codex? I think it is a breath of foul air rolling in, but it is really interesting Codex, like all of them have been so far in 9th edition, and hopefully will continue to be as we go on. Take care all.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy our content, like the video, maybe leave us a comment. Thank you.